Is the Ring of Honor New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Supercard going to be better than WrestleMania 35? What do you say, Ralph?
I say yes.
I say no, and we'll tell you why on this episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble. Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti, and tonight we are comparing the G1 Supercard to WrestleMania 35 a week before the big weekend, the Christmas of wrestling fans, WrestleMania weekend. Before we get to the conversation, make sure you hit subscribe and that bell for notifications as we're trying to hit 5,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling Double or Nothing. Now, last week, Ralph, we did an episode where we compared Double or Nothing to WrestleMania and TakeOver. And people, we saw the comments, we saw the tweets, we saw on Instagram. Why wasn't the G1 Supercard mentioned in this video? Well, first off, we didn't have a full card yet.
Yep.
Many matches still to be determined. And now that we have the full card, we could finally compare WrestleMania to the G1 Supercard. And this is a big one because it's the first show at Madison Square Garden, not WWE, since 1960.
Right.
So, Ralph, why is this going to be better than WrestleMania?
Well, I mean, like you said before, when we had discussed comparing, Double or Nothing to NXT TakeOver and WrestleMania, we at least had an idea of what a lot of the main matches were going to be for a good majority of those. Now, granted, Double or Nothing, we don't know some of the matches that are going to be happening on that, but we know enough of the big ones like your Jerichos and Omegas to at least kind of make an educated guess as to how good this can actually be. Now that we've seen the card for the G1 Supercard, it's very apparent that first of all, this card is stacked. Top to bottom, a lot of talent from both Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling, and I think one of the things that led people to believe that at least from my perspective, that this wouldn't necessarily live up to expectations was if you think back to when the tickets originally went on sale for this. So this was before All In happened. This is before All Elite Wrestling was even something that was even taken into consideration, right? So that stuff wasn't announced. So I think it was assumed that your Kenny Omegas, your Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, those guys would be heavily involved in this. Once All Elite Wrestling was formed, we knew that wasn't going to happen. So we knew that these guys weren't going to be on the card, and I think a lot of people looked at that and kind of said, okay, well, it might be hard for them to meet expectations. But I mean, like I said, when you look at the card as it stands right now, it's stacked.
Now, I will say this. The fact that Kenny Omega, Cody, and the Bucks and Hangman are not there, that was definitely a big hole to fill.
Yep.
And I think they definitely filled it the best way they could. Yep. They have Kazuchika Okada versus Jay White. And Jay White, you could argue, is the top foreign heel in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Yep. You have the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match between GOD, Guerrillas of Destiny, Villain Enterprise, PCO, and Brody King. You have the Briscoes, and you have Evil and Sanada of LIJ. Yep. You have Jay Lethal, Matt Taven, and Marty Scurll in a ladder match. Right. 25 years after the infamous ladder match in that same building between Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon. Will Ospreay versus Jeff Cobb. It is definitely a stacked card. Mm-hmm. But to me, there are a lot of 3.5 to 4-star matches. Which, you know what? The consistency is definitely going to be there. And, of course, Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Zack Sabre Jr., Tetsuya Naito versus Kota Ibushi. It is definitely a great card. But WrestleMania is WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And, they are really, really stacking up their card just as much as the G1 Supercard is. And I said this in our previous video, in our previous episode, that you can actually have 5 legitimate main events in this WrestleMania. And that's the triple threat, Triple H and Batista, AJ and Randy Orton, Kofi and Daniel Bryan, and Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar. Yep. Now, there are some disappointing matches in WrestleMania 35 that not many people want to see. I understand that. One of them being Kurt Angle versus Baron Corbin. But at the same time, you have Bully Ray and having a mystery opponent. Now, it looked like all roads were going to point to Flip Gordon, but he just recently got hurt.
Recently
so who fills that void? And I don't think they're going to have someone big enough to fill that void. Now,
sure.
it's a surprise. Who knows? It could be anybody. It could be someone on the Ring of Honor roster. It could be someone in the New Japan roster that we're missing. It's hard to tell. The other thing, too, is you look at the two main matches, the two championship matches here, Jay White and Okada and the triple threat ladder match. While I think they will be better than some of the 5 I mentioned, I don't think they'll be better than all of the 5 I mentioned.
Well, I mean, going back to our last discussion, my point was always this about WrestleMania. Because it's built up and because we know, based on recent history, there are matches on WrestleMania cards that will typically disappoint from time to time. I think WrestleMania has the most potential to disappoint the fans. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One, like I've been saying all along, I'm still not convinced that they're going to deliver the fans what they want ultimately for the big 3 matches. So I expect Becky Lynch to win.
Yep.
I expect Kofi Kingston to win. I don't expect Seth Rollins to win. And the reason I say that is I think he can afford the loss the most of the 3. Seeing that now we know the women are going to main event, I think that they want to have that feel-good moment. I think that we're going to see the crowning of a new champion, and I think that Becky Lynch is going to unify the titles. Kofi Kingston, I think his momentum right now is too strong, and I don't think you can necessarily deny that because, especially on the grandest stage of them all at WrestleMania, I don't think it would be wise for them to deny Kofi Kingston a win here.
Now, I've seen a couple things on social media, some speculations on what could happen. And the reason why on Tuesday, Charlotte Flair won the SmackDown Women's title. It wasn't necessarily to unify the women's titles. It was so that when Becky beats Ronda, she will have the Raw Women's Championship. Charlotte will have the SmackDown Women's Championship. And then we have Bayley and Sasha with the tag team titles. And they're going to be center stage to close out WrestleMania as the 4 horsewomen of WWE and the 4 that really kickstarted this women's evolution to where it is today. The other thing is people are believing that Big E is going to turn on Kofi Kingston.
Sure.
And cost him the WWE Championship. Personally, I don't think it's going to happen during the match. I could see it after the match.
Yep.
Because I definitely believe that Kofi's going to win, and I believe that they want to give him the championship. But again, this is the IWC just wanting everybody to turn heel for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But you look at the G1 Supercard, and I will say that it is unpredictable. I don't really see, okay, this guy's definitely winning, this guy's definitely winning, except one match. And that's the main event. I think Okada is definitely winning that match.
Well, we know this is going to be a rematch from their first encounter at Wrestle Kingdom, where I actually didn't think that Jay White was going to get the win. I expect big things for 2 people on this card for the year going forward. And these guys actually had a match, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago. And that is one of them being Jay White and the other one being Ospreay. Mm-hmm. So I think in terms of where they ranked on the PWI Top 500 last year, Ospreay was 12. I think Jay White was 44.
Somewhere in that range,
I'm confident saying both of these guys will end up within the top 10 this year. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them winds up in the top 5. And I think they're going to have a really big year. And I think that Jay White and Okada are going to have an amazing match. If you watch the match between him and Okada, the Jay White and Ospreay, I just watched it yesterday. Great match. So I think that in terms of what the fans are going to be looking for, if you're looking for in-ring ability and just pure wrestling, you're going to be more satisfied with the G1 card. Now, again, that's what I'm most interested in, so I might be more pleased with something like the G1 card. Somebody who wants to be there for more of the spectacle, you're going to want to be at something like WrestleMania. But if you're somebody who wants to watch a pay-per-view or a big card, big main event for the wrestling ability, I'm not so sure you're going to get that out of WrestleMania, especially when you consider something like Triple H and Batista being one of the bigger matches of the night.
Right, but we know Triple H matches typically do deliver, especially at WrestleMania. We look at his matches with The Undertaker.
Sure.
His match with Seth Rollins, although it wasn't the match of the night, it was still good. His match last year was the match of the night with Kurt Angle, Ronda Rousey, and Stephanie McMahon. I will say that WrestleMania is all about the moment. You know, that moment, whether it's to close out the show, that one match that's going to withstand the test of time, like a Savage and Steamboat or a Razor.
Hogan Rock,
you know, those iconic moments that withstand the test of time. Now, this is already an iconic moment for being a non-WWE event in Madison Square Garden and selling it out.
Selling it out in 19 minutes.
Right. So it's already an iconic moment. I get that. But Jay White and Okada closing out the show, is that a big enough moment for Okada to win and take back the IWGP Heavyweight Championship? Is whoever wins the Ring of Honor ladder match, is it a big enough moment for them holding the belt on top of a ladder, whether it's Marty Scurll, Matt Taven, or Jay Lethal? Is there a match on this card that will eventually be compared to the Savage and Steamboats, to the Shawn Michaels Undertaker? There could be. And one match that I say, well, that could steal the entire weekend is Tetsuya Naito versus Kota Ibushi for the Intercontinental Championship.
Well, that's because you're a Naito mark.
I am a Naito mark, and I'm an Ibushi mark too, and I think their match at the New Japan Cup in the first round was an amazing match. I honestly thought whoever was going to win that match was going to end up winning the whole tournament and face Jay White, but Kazuchika Okada obviously did that. So I think with the G1 Supercard, that's the match that could steal the show. I wouldn't also be surprised if Tanahashi and Zack Sabre Jr. steal the show.
Well, that's the thing. When you talk about stealing the show, if I were to look at WrestleMania, right, we know that there's going to be upwards of, who knows, they're speculating, what, 12, 15, maybe more
the speculation
matches?
is 18.
Okay.
As of this recording, we are at 13, I believe.
So we know there's going to be at least 13 matches. Of the 13 matches, I'm confident saying 3 or 4 of those can legitimately deliver a WrestleMania moment, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
You know, equal to your Rocker Hogan or your HBK Razor, something to that level. When I look at this G1 card, I just go down the list and I'm like, well, that's on the undercard. That's could open the night, and that could be one of the best matches of the night. I mean, like you said, you got Naito and Ibushi, Tanahashi, Zack Sabre Jr., Ospreay, Jeff Cobb. I don't know a lot about Jeff Cobb. I've seen him wrestle a couple of times. I know he's great. Jay Lethal versus Matt Taven versus Marty Scurll. I mean, it's just an endless list, and now we have the Briscoes thrown into the tag team match. So, to me, depending on what you're looking for, after it's all said and done, whether it's the NXT card, whether it's the G1, or whether it's WrestleMania, I think people are going to look back on this weekend and say, well, you know what? That was the most the most solid card. That had the best matches overall, top to bottom. You may have two great to good matches at WrestleMania, but like I said, I'm not confident that WWE is going to put on a show that's going to please everybody.
Well, that's the thing. I've always been a believer of you can't please everybody.
It's true.
So you're going to have to do things that people don't like. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, you want people to have a reaction, whether it is good or bad. But at the end of the day, you want them to leave with saying that they were entertained.
Sure.
You know, when the credits roll, when the last match is done and everyone's heading to the parking lot, trying to beat the traffic, you want to say it was worth it. It was worth paying $150, $300, thousands of dollars to be at that WrestleMania.
Yep.
You already have the moment of the first ever women's main event at WrestleMania. And I think it's going to deliver because we know Becky can deliver, we know Charlotte can deliver, and we know Ronda can deliver. Mm-hmm. Whether or not you disagree with me or not, to me, it's the truth. We know Triple H and Batista can deliver when it matters most. Batista, Randy Orton, Daniel Bryan, triple threat at WrestleMania 30. Okay. AJ Styles, arguably the best wrestler in the world, against Randy Orton. You know, the guy that was created solely in WWE versus the guy that had to go through bingo halls and New Japan and Ring of Honor and basically go in the entire circuit before finally coming to WWE. That independent indie darling versus the machine of WWE, culminating at WrestleMania. Like I said, this card is just too big to fail.
Well, and that's the problem. Because it seems like it's a card that's too big to fail, they're put in a position where now they're going to have to go out there and steal the weekend. Not just, okay, well, the competition over the past several years has been, okay, well, NXT might be better than the main card or the main pay-per-view, and it has been for quite some time. But now you have the G1, this card, coming in with New Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor, coming in the backyard of where WrestleMania is being hosted in Madison Square Garden, selling it out in 19 minutes, having WWE shift NXT from a Saturday night to a Friday because, who knows, maybe they were influenced by the impact of that this card would have. Those guys on this G1 card, I think, are going to go out there to try and prove a point that, hey, pro wrestling is changing. Things are changing in the industry, and we're trying to compete with you guys. And I think this is going to be their chance to really make a big statement, especially if people watch all three of these and you come out of this weekend saying, you know what, that was the best card. That was the best match. If you can point to certain things from this card. So yeah, I mean, WWE, it is WrestleMania, but I think this WrestleMania is going to have a lot of significance over the course of what happens with the future of professional wrestling for the next, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. It is certainly the most important weekend for the wrestling industry as a whole. Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
Because there's so many different shows that are happening. And I know this always happens with WrestleMania weekend, but you have Major League Wrestling having Battle Riot. You have Impact Wrestling doing United We Stand. You have Shimmer doing a show. Like, every promotion is doing some kind of show this weekend. Yep. And if they all succeed to whatever their expectations are, it's great for everybody. Mm-hmm. Whether you're a WWE fan or a Ring of Honor fan or a New Japan fan, or heck, you're saying All Elite Wrestling all the way, and even though they're not part of this weekend, it's just great to be a wrestling fan.
Absolutely. I mean, if nothing else, whether it's AEW or the resurgence of New Japan Pro Wrestling or the rise of the independent scene right now, if that's what's forced WWE to put on one of the best WrestleMania cards of all time, and they go out there and they actually deliver, and this ends up being the best WrestleMania of all time, that's good for the industry overall. Competition is great. We've seen it with WCW and WWE back in the day. When WCW was really big, it forced WWE to do certain things that they weren't necessarily ready to do, but it changed the landscape of the industry across the board.
Right.
So if that's what's going to happen, as long as the other companies can stay afloat and remain popular and relevant, I'm all for that because it's fun for the fans at the end of the day.
Now, I will say this. For WrestleMania to succeed, everyone's scared that it's going to be this 7-8 hour long show, which you probably think it will, and most likely will be. But if WWE really wants WrestleMania to be a really, really great card and deliver like it's supposed to, go back and do the same formula as WrestleMania 6. Okay? I just watched WrestleMania 6 over the weekend. That show was 3.5 hours. And it had 13 matches. It had a singing entertainment segment. Yep. It had backstage interviews. It had a long entrance. I mean, sure, it was expedited by the rolling ring thing. Yeah. And it was still entertaining. The trick is they only had 2 matches that were over 10 minutes, 1 over 20, which was the main event. Yep. Everything else was under 10 minutes. I think you leave the 5 matches that I mentioned, let them have 12 to 18 to 20 minutes. Everybody else is less than 10 minutes. Because, honestly,
you're going to have to move quick. And you're not even talking about entrances and everything else. And
right.
Who knows? I mean, we don't know if John Cena's going to show up.
Or
we don't know if Undertaker's going to show up. So that could be a potential. Who knows? They may face each other. It could be another whole 2 matches. You don't know.
Who knows? Maybe we see John Cena interrupt Baron Corbin, and it is actually inserted into the Kurt Angle farewell match.
Yep, and you're going to have Elias and his whole deal where he's supposedly going to have the best performance. So that's something else. So yeah, I mean, either way, regardless of how fast they move, it's going to make for a long night. I think the key for them is just delivering in the ring, especially with the bigger matches. You can have your quick matches, but I think the big matches, the women have to deliver.
Yep.
The Daniel Bryan Kofi Kingston match has to deliver. And Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar, it doesn't necessarily have to be a half-hour, 5-star match, but it has to be fast-paced, similar to the same thing that you had with Finn Balor and Brock,
exactly.
AJ Styles, something of that nature, that type of approach. The good thing for WWE and the good thing for the WrestleMania wrestlers is this: it's the bookend. It's the last show that's going to happen that weekend. So they're in a position where, depending what happens with NXT. Depending what happens with the G1 Supercard, if those are great cards, the pressure is going to be all on them.
Yep.
But that may force the wrestlers, that may inspire the wrestlers to put on their very best performance. And I hope that's what happens because, as wrestling fans, we're always cynical of WWE and critical of the product. But at the end of the day, I think everybody wants to be entertained. And why wouldn't you want them to go out there and have the best WrestleMania of all time?
Right. So, at the end of the day, let us know which show is going to be the best. Is it NXT TakeOver? Is it the G1 Supercard? Or is it WrestleMania 35? Which show is going to be the best on WrestleMania weekend? You could vote on the eye above my head. You could comment below. Make sure you share this all over social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at SCPB Podcast. Subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to hit 5,000 YouTube subscribers before All Elite Wrestling Double or Nothing. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti, and thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.